Hi, my name is Lainie, and I moved to Mexico in 2020, and I'm originally from Los Angeles, California.
And I'm Miro. I'm her son. That's me. And I've been here quite as long. I've been here for almost 3 years. So I got here in 2021, 2022.
So like I said, we're originally from Los Angeles, California, and in 2008, we experienced an economy crash. Now, during that time, I had worked in advertising, marketing, graphic design, branding for almost 18 years, and the last 8 of those years, I actually owned my own agency. And when the economy crashed, I saw my clients going away left and right. And being a single parent and running a business at the time really took a toll on me. I was overworked, overstressed, and at the time, my son, Miro, was only 9 years old. And he used to say to me all the time, you want to say what you used to say?
Yeah, I used to say, Mom, you never spend any time with me. Yeah, I mean, you were a workaholic, right? You worked
Absolutely.
Upwards of 80 hours a week. We had a pretty conventional, normal life. I went to school. But yeah, we were like really never saw each other much. And truthfully, we were pretty miserable. So when the economy totally tanked, when it crashed in 2008, we decided that we needed to make a change. And so the plan was we were going to sell all of our belongings, give up our home, and take off for a year and go and see the world, have an adventure, and travel.
In 2020, the pandemic hit, as you know. I don't think there's a soul on the planet that doesn't know that. We happened to be here in Mexico hosting a conference, and we had flights to Japan, and we were waiting and waiting and waiting, and the airlines never opened up, and we stayed. And so in 2020, you were 21 and said, okay, well, if we're not traveling, if we're not going back to Japan and following through with all the rest of our plans, travel plans for the year, I'm going to Florida, out of all places, right?
Yeah, so I went back to the States to spend some time with my girlfriend at the time, and my mom ended up staying here, and she decided to move. We were in Quintana Roo, we were in Playa del Carmen, and she decided to move from there to come here to Guanajuato, just because she loved it so much. We'd visited Guanajuato some 9 years ago, 8-9 years ago for the first time. We really liked it, and so she moved out here, and eventually I came down to visit her, and I got stuck myself, and so I'm here too.
We've been out of the United States for 15 years, and I have to say the list of things that we miss is minuscule. I can't really, I mean, we can get everything that we like food-wise here, or we can make it. Life is great here. I really can't think of anything.
I know you're probably expecting, the common answer, which is like, oh, we miss family, or we miss, those kinds of connections that we had back home. And, we do have family that we don't see all the time, and miss them sometimes. But if I'm being perfectly honest, my real answer is those salt and vinegar kettle chips. Oh, love them. And I can't get them here, and it drives me crazy. That's my one thing.
We've learned to adjust. We've learned to be uncomfortable. And the discomfort became part of our comfort zone. And that really granted us both space to grow. So I look at this as a tremendous opportunity. In terms of the lifestyle that we used to live, I don't miss that at all. We overworked. I hardly spent time with my growing child at that time. Now he's a man, and I got to spend 15 years traveling the world with him, and now he's decided to live in the same place that his mom lives because we have such a lovely connected relationship, and that's what leaving the United States granted us.
Yeah, I don't miss the way of life.
Adapting to a new community has been through our choice to slow travel and really put roots down and live in a country as a visiting local, we will always understand that we are not, you know, a local. We are an immigrant. We have immigrated to that country for whatever period of time, and there's got to be grace in that approach and putting down deep roots, whether they're you know, for 3 months or 3 years. To me, the intention of really getting to know the neighbors and making a relationship with the people that work in the shops, you know, reaching out to people in social spaces and participating in social events. But our choice to live here in Guanajuato has been a lot more of the going deeper and deeper and really planting deeper roots. You've been social and I've been gardening, you know, and painting and just different types of ways of connecting with community.
Yeah, I think when people talk about travel, the ingredient that is often left out is time. Right? It's kind of this realization that, you know, life takes time and these aren't things that you can really rush or you can expect to experience fully over the span of a month or a few months, right? Let alone a few weeks. You get to know people and you become a part of their lives and you get closer, and that takes years, right? And it never stops changing and that process never stops. And so I think that, yeah, this question of traveling slowly and with intention, I mean, I think that's how you find belonging. And I think that that's how you start to not even find it, but create a sense of belonging. You can't rush those things. You can't rush it. I mean, life happens on its own time frame. And yeah, you just got to be patient. You can't get frustrated with it.
And I think the only thing I would add to that is the awareness that it requires anybody who's stepping into a culture that's not their own, the grace of being vulnerable, because we don't know how every new culture functions and what the customs are. But if we're eager to learn and we have the grace of not knowing and wanting to know and wanting to be a part of it without trying to overtake and make the locals do things the way that I'm used to.
Right.
There's a really big difference between those two approaches.
Yeah, you have to be willing to be wrong, right? And I don't think...
apologize.
And you apologize, right? And accept that, you know, the way you saw something maybe wasn't accurate at one point, right? And that's okay. Right? It's okay to have been wrong and to learn from that and move forward. But you have to be open to having been wrong at one point.
Each country has its own regional identities as well. Like, for example, we lived in Playa del Carmen, and that was not a good match for us. It felt very touristy. And you know, what I search for is the ability to connect with people from the country. So in this case, from Mexico. And so I didn't want to live in a touristy area, and I wanted to be in a place where there was live, you know, it was alive with culture. I wanted art, I wanted music.
It's a difference, and you know, especially to where we are now here in Guanajuato, I mean, a very, very historical city. Yeah, it's night and day. The thing I'm most attracted to here in Guanajuato, probably for me, has to be the social sphere, the social dynamic. I have really formed an amazing community here. It's a university town, of course, so there's definitely, like, you know, a lot of social happenings, a lot of interaction for me amongst people my age. A lot of interesting things going on, a lot of art, a lot of culture. I also am a rock climber. We've got a really nice climbing zone up here in La Bufa, so a lot of sport climbing, so it's great.
Yeah, for me, I love the community of art. I love the cafes, the restaurants. I love the nightlife.
The nightlife.
Yeah. I think it's a wonderful historical place to be at, and so I love it here.
As far as safety concerns go, I've always felt really safe here in Guanajuato Capital. I think you have too, right? You hear a lot of chatter from people talking about like, oh, Guanajuato is so dangerous, or it's reckless to go there. But I would always say like, look, you got to do your research, and you got to also contextualize like the city and the state, right, and how they're two different things. Yeah, I mean, you gotta be careful sometimes in Irapuato or in Silao or in Salamanca, right? But Guanajuato Capital, I mean, I've always felt very safe here. I walk everywhere.
I agree. And, if you're going to travel with a grand sense of fear, that is going to pepper your experience for sure. However, being a single mom and traveling with a young child when you were young, obviously we made choices that were smart. We didn't go out at 3 in the morning and walk down dark alleys. There are certain things, as somebody who travels, we adapt as well. There are sometimes streets where I won't walk on the sidewalk at night. I'd rather walk in the middle of the street. And that's just because I've traveled around the world and I know how to keep myself safe. The reason why I wouldn't be on the sidewalk is it's closer to bushes and things of that nature, so somebody can grab you. And so just adapting an awareness of knowing your surroundings. But I'll tell you, we come from downtown LA and it's no different. So we already had this sense of we're going to approach life and we're accountable for our own safety.
I don't know, Americans always have a slightly skewed vision of how Mexico is when it comes to crime. And it does drive me a little bit crazy. I mean, personally, I feel a lot safer here in Mexico. Of course, you have to be aware and conscious, of course, of your surroundings all the time. Like, that's just a good practice. But truthfully, I feel so much safer here than in practically any place in the US.
When I moved here in 2020, it was in the middle of the pandemic and things were a little strange, of course. I found a place through the help of a friend of a friend who already lived here. And I asked him to go out and find me a place to live. And this is when I was in Playa del Carmen. And so he found me a place. He showed me several places, via the internet, via photos, via Messenger. And I found one that I liked that was in a price range that I was comfortable with. And I rented, just that quick and easy. And when I got here, I ended up really liking the area, Pastita. It was a quiet area. It was away from downtown, from Centro. And it felt really comfortable. And I lived in that house. It was a very small house. I paid 8,000 pesos when I first moved in. And I was comfortable, but there wasn't a whole lot going on in the city during the pandemic. And so, I dug in and it was a comfortable space for me to be in. And then when the city started opening up quite a bit more and there were more things happening as the pandemic started to fade away, I decided that, I think I do want to stay in Guanajuato. I really love it. I think that is going to be my next step. But I'm going to find a house where I can have a garden and have a dog. Well, I ended up having a garden and 2 dogs. The house, when I rented it, was 7,000 pesos. Since then, I know that the prices of houses in the area have gone up dramatically. Dramatically? Wait,
That's not a word. That's not a word.
I do know, however, the prices in the area have gone up. And you are not able probably to find a 3-bedroom house, even in the outskirts of Centro, for more than 10,000 to 12,000 pesos now. But
the houses in Guanajuato are very weird. Weird houses. That's a pretty common comment. I don't want to say complaint, but people say that a lot. As far as like within Mexico goes, I know Guanajuato isn't necessarily all that cheap, right, when it comes to cost of living. It's a tourist city, so some things are considered more expensive than they would be in other places. I've never found them to be outrageously expensive. Like, I think it is affordable, but again, it's a matter of perspective, right?
And it depends, what do you value? What are the things that you spend your money on? There is a sort of high scale, upper scale store, supermarket called La Comer. And you can spend, 5,000 pesos there if you're filling up your basket with all of these imports. I do a little bit of shopping in all different places. I cook. I grow my food on the roof too. I eat locally as well. I love tacos from the taco trucks, and everything's I think it's quite affordable.
Yeah, but I think it's also, it always is like a matter of perspective, right?
Yeah.
Because I always want to fight that gringo impulse to be like, oh my God, it's so cheap. Oh my God, it's so cheap, right? It drives me crazy when I hear that on the street, because it's just like, all right, well, let's put this into perspective, right? Let's also have a conversation about, it's like, do you know what the average daily wage is here? Like, do you know what Mexicans make in a day? Like, it's not that much, right? It's around 200 pesos a day, right? Is what you can kind of expect. Think about it for a second, right? Like, is that really? So I don't know. It's just, it's always something to consider.
I recognize, and if you're watching this video and considering moving to Mexico, you have to recognize that there is privilege in doing that, and there is some separation just by virtue of where you were born.
And I'm never going to fault anybody for, immigrating for the purposes of trying to find a better life for themselves.
It's beautiful.
And like, look, I think that's something that everybody should be able to do, right? My point though is that when you move somewhere, and sometimes, like, if it's for economic reasons or if it's for, whatever reason it is, you can't move to that place and expect to change it.
But there are times that I see people that move here, that immigrate here, and they're asking questions like, what neighborhood can I move to where it's not noisy, where the music doesn't play, and there's no dogs? And my answer is, stay in your home country.
All those three things that you've just described Mexico. Yeah, so we mentioned a little bit before, we're in the process right now of opening a business here locally. So we're opening a cafe, and it's going to be called Changos Changos Changos, or informally Changos Tres. And it's actually going to be a board game cafe. We both love playing board games. We're very playful people. We think that, a lot of learning happens in play. And outside of that, also, like, a pretty large, well, like a chunk of our social circle here is through our board game nights, right? So we've got all these local friends that are really into board games, and, they love Catan, they love, all kinds of stuff like that. We noticed that there wasn't really a center or a place for us to meet, and so we were always meeting in houses, and and that's,
or different cafes.
Different cafes, and that's fine too. And we noticed that there wasn't one here in Guanajuato, and so this has been a dream of ours for quite a few years. We're undertaking the process, and it's been a real learning process as well. I mean, figuring out all the trámites, figuring out, like, how to get your RFC, like getting all this documentation done, working within, like, Mexican bureaucracy and, like, all this stuff. And you know what? It's been great. I mean, navigating all that. It helps speaking the language, so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I would also say something that you mentioned, which is the playfulness aspect. I think our approach to life and travel for the last 15 years has been, like you said, through this engagement of playfulness. And I think if you are planning on moving to another country, you've got to approach playfulness as one of your tools. Yeah, make it fun.
Like, it's a really good piece of advice, is to drop that impulse and stop taking yourself so seriously. That's kind of what we're trying to really bring to Changos here in Guanajuato Centro.
And it's also a way to serve the community, because people are looking for something other to do other than drinking, right?
Yeah, drinking is a really big part of the culture here in Guanajuato, and that's also kind of changing a little bit too. I mean, you know, it's a university town, and young people, like this generation of young people, are probably like the least alcoholic out of any generation that has come before them. I think that the best way, if you were interested in going and starting a business here in Mexico, I mean, first of all, you have to drop any expectation that you have that things are going to resemble what they look like in your home country. It's probably going to be different in a large number of ways.
3 times longer.
Well, so for some things, and for others, it's surprisingly easy, and for others, you know, I think that the best way is like not get too attached to any one process, and instead ask your friends who own a business, right? I mean, get firsthand advice, or if you have a question, just ask somebody that you know, like, hey, what did you do for this? Hey, can you help me out with this? Hey, you know, that was definitely kind of what our process looked like. Having been traveling for 15 years, right, one of the common questions that we get is, you know, well, how do you afford to do this, right? I mean, I think that a lot of people, when they hear about our story for the first time, they initially have this idea that, you know, we've been coasting off of savings, and we come from pretty affluent means, and
none of those things are true.
Once I hit my like early adolescence, like once I was like 13, 14, I was really starting to feel, yeah, like a craving or like a need for community. And it was this kind of like really difficult realization that the community that we were both really looking for didn't exist at that time. You know, we were like looking for people who kind of understood that nomadic lifestyle while we were moving around so much. And yeah, there wasn't really like a community for it. So we decided like, well, we would have to create that. And that's where we started our company that we still run today, though not as much, but it's called Project World School. And basically what Project World School does is, I always like to describe it as, we organize school trips internationally for teenagers who never went to school. So they're homeschoolers, or they're unschooled, or they're, you know, somehow operating outside of like traditional channels. And yeah, I mean, it's just been really an amazing experience, like over this last decade of running this thing. Post-pandemic, here we are.
And that brought us to places like South Africa, to Greece, to Wales, Peru, which was our base for many years, Ecuador, Mexico. Last year in March, February, March, we produced our 10th conference. We call them the Project World School Family Summits.
But it was actually the family summits that brought us to Guanajuato.
Yes.
All those years ago. I mean, we came here and we produced an event here, and so we had one of these conferences here in Guanajuato, and just kind of fell in love with it like 8-9 years ago, and it's just been on our mind ever since. So I think another thing too is, you know, talking about like doing your best when you immigrate to try and melt away all of the differences, right? And try to melt away like the social and cultural barriers, not on the end of the locals, but on your end, right? Like, what's stopping you from getting closer to living in the way that a local would live? Like, what are your requirements? What are your standards of living? Like, those things little by little will necessarily get closer to those of the locals, right? And they have to, if you really want to integrate. I think that in the case of money, I mean, you really have to make such a conscious effort never to lose total touch, you know, of the way that the people around you are living. You have to be so engaged and so conscious about that.
I'd like to actually answer the question, what they can do individually. And I think the first thing that you can do is live in local homes. Don't live in overpriced homes, and don't demand luxuries that are not common to this country. Honor the traditions of the place that you are in. And if that includes a standardized 10% tipping, please do not tip more. It only makes you feel better, but what you're doing is you're elevating the economy, and you're making everybody who has decided to immigrate to a country that is not their home country, you're making us become the targets of these, you know, of these acts of gentrification. And if we're trying, or resentment, and if we're trying to integrate and do things the way the Mexicans do it, and more people that are immigrating are not, then we get lumped in to the people that are not.
But also in this conversation, it's not about us. I mean, like, you know, it really isn't. I mean, that is true. Like, that does happen, but that's not really the concern. The main concern is the effect that it has on the local, you know, the local economy, the local sphere, because truthfully, we live in it too, right? So of course it also affects us. It affects everybody. Do your best to live in accordance with the way the people live.
I'd say get involved in the community. Get involved. Don't take the lead on any project. Become somebody who's of service. And that, to me, is the very first thing and the minimal thing that you can do. I
do think the social dynamic is probably the best one. Form real relationships and friendships. And, you know, you are denying people the opportunity to know you, and people the opportunity to accept you, right? And if they never see you or they never interact with you, how can they accept you, right? So I think that first, forget about all of the politics, forget about all of the economics, and that isn't to say that they're not important. I think they are very important. But approach it as a person first. Make friends everywhere you go and really make an effort to meet people where they are and connect, and everything else will follow. First and foremost, the social answer is the most important.
Thank you for watching our interview. We really appreciate you spending the time with us and hope that we offered something to think about. And if you come to Mexico, we wish you a wonderful, immersive learning experience.
Thanks for listening to our interview as well. And yeah, I'm really grateful for this opportunity.